Hello, today's video is called Public Inquiry to Federal Government Invoking the Emergency Act on February 2022. Today was day 4. Today is October 18, 2022. The agenda for today is background witnesses and my point of view. As everybody knows, we're in the middle of an inquiry trying to understand the reasons why Justin Castro invoked the Emergency Act on February 14, 2022 against the truckers and in general community who were protesting against the COVID mandates, and most importantly, understand if those powers that were exercised were either misused or act accordingly to the act. The link below shows where every single day we can see live this inquiry. Today, witnesses were only two, and they were both from the city of Ottawa. The first one was the mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson, and the left we see the commission councillor who spent vast majority of the day doing the inquiry, and he originally had a timeline with some notes, and those notes were removed, which I found very interesting. Maybe they were leading or not, but obviously either he didn't understand the process or something was going on with that. He ratified that Steve Kay was the one who was in direct contact day to day with all the different things with the city. And he did a clarification regarding the hotel information. Yesterday we were talking about the fact that because the truckers had inquired about spending a lot of time in Ottawa, perhaps until April, he ratified that an inquiry is not a booking, therefore they couldn't conclude that they were planning to stay in long term. He also confirmed that he met with GoFundMe to make sure that the funds were frozen, and he spoke to the GoFund people saying that they were committing illegal activities that were harmful to the city. That seriously gets me upset. Aside from the accusations that I'm not going to even read because they are so awful that I can't even understand, the insults were really, really annoying to me. The way these politicians express about us, about the regular people who really want some freedom when the whole world is asking for the same, is really difficult for me to understand. And he gave a very political answer when he was asked what could have the city done better. So everybody else in the system was doing something wrong according to him, but when it was time for him to do a reflection asked by the commission councillor, he simply answered in a political manner, which means to me you're not really answering. So there's no fault on his end, of course. And he said that the Emergency Act was the only tool that allowed for the tow trucks to be forced by law and common help to remove the trucks that were still in the city. And he said, and I don't know if it's true or not, but he said that all the towing companies were still a little bit concerned about having long-term issues with truckers, so they were covering their logos with the OPP logos. There were some other questioning from the convoy councillor. You can see the body language on the left. You closely see that he was not either impressed or aligned with the position of the mayor. I caught him a couple of times with his body language closing. Obviously, there was a lot of tension. And again, the way he expresses himself is just disrespectful. I don't understand why a mayor would talk like that, even though I understand it was stressful for everyone. I think there is a manner in which somebody has to conduct themselves in a court of law, or at least an inquiry, as this one is. So not impressed. The councillor for slowly, and the only thing that they keep on repeating is that the big learning is that if all parties would have come together faster, then it would have been a faster resolution. When the Ottawa Business Coalition councillor was in the questioning side, that's when the mayor started to say, literally, and I quote him, "We had lost 800 people due to COVID up to that point, and we're still dealing with COVID and losing people every day. I live it in green. You know what green means. Green means I'm not aligned with that at all. The whole world is knowing for a fact through the Commission in the European Union that all this COVID, as we, the conspiracy theorists, always knew, is just a lie, and they keep on bringing this even in something that was not necessary." The convoy police, sorry, this is the police, not the convoy police, the police councillor This is what he was being called, according to the major. I'm not going to even read that. He declares that the Canadian flags being upside down are something horrible. It's a sign of distress. That's internationally understood. But again, it's very inflammatory. He said that he received 1 to 3 threats. If I would have been threatened, I would know exactly how many times I would have received a threat. So to me, again, not very precise, means maybe it's not true, maybe it's half true. It's very difficult to understand what parts are and what are not. And that there was a man from Nova Scotia that had guns in the truck and he was driving to hurt him, so he was arrested. Again, I don't know. I haven't researched that. The government of Canada, not very extensive, confirming the need to bring order to the areas. Not really that interesting to me. The second witness, Kim Coyote, that is the general manager for the Emergency and Protective Services of the city. Love the witness, super pleasant demeanor, super cooperative. He was consistently smiling, and his body language, in my opinion, was always conveying that he wanted to be helpful and that he was concerned about the city, but he wanted to be objective and not trying to be in any manner inflammatory. He never once used the word occupation, which I loved. So he was talking about the ratification that the towing companies, yes, they were refusing to help the removal of the trucks from the protest, but they were mostly saying that they were fearing the not only the business being hurt, but not only because of the activity, but because they were aligned with the truckers. So that's his testimony, which is different than everybody else who tries to spread the answers into way too many areas, such as, oh, they were fearing that there could be damage to their equipment. He clearly said there was never a mention of fearing to damage to their equipment. If the general manager of the Emergency and Protective Services does not know, nobody knows. So in other words, you're going to see not only here, but in later testimony, that he's contradicting all these inflammatory issues that have been brought by the councillors in the past 2 days. They also talked about the bylaw enforcement in the red zone was declared to be requiring support by the police personnel to minimize the possibility of a difficult situation or maybe an interaction that could be negative. So that was a direct order that was given to all the bylaw officers. And then he confirmed that only on the second week there was alignment between the OPS and the bylaw officers. And then he said that the emergency lanes and the clearance of such was the biggest concern and his biggest focus throughout the operation. There were some texts shown, some communication shows, and very important, this is the most important part perhaps of the whole well, no, there are two parts that are very important. He's only saying that only Kent Street, so Kent Street is here, if Parliament Hill is here. So he said that only Kent Street was fully blocked, but the side streets would allow attending any emergency that would have taken place. So this contradicts the previous testimony from the two councillors of the city of Ottawa that were saying that everything was blocked, nothing would be easy to. They just keep on doing a lot of exaggeration that clearly here we can see there was only one part that was really blocked. And again, this is the person who would know for sure what is happening in the city in terms of these logistics and details. And when they're referring here to some clarification about the text from February 14, they were maybe 40 trucks and they were talking only about trucks. So just for understanding, for our understanding, when they talk about trucks, they only are mentioning big trucks, not necessarily the small ones. Now we had then the Ottawa police. He was showing his own notes, which I found fascinating. So many things are being brought up. Be careful what you write when you write it, etc., kind of thing. And then he was not 100% clear regarding where were the trucks on February 15th when the Emergency Act was invoked. So this is very important because we saw yesterday some images of empty streets, and then he said, yes, they were empty, and then the police councillor pressed him to say, oh, but maybe the other side of the camera had a lot of trucks. So he said perhaps, because of course the poor man doesn't know. But again, there was a lot of pressure to him more than once to try to either change his testimony or to make it more concerning than than he originally disclosed it to be. The convoy counselor, I noticed today he uses very loose language. I actually didn't appreciate it because I really liked Kim, and he was saying, oh, you're in charge of all the emergency vehicles and that sort of thing. And I thought, what an imprecise language. You're a lawyer. You shouldn't do that. But again, he didn't even understand his own notes. I'll give him a pass because that happens to me many times. But again, this is a very important inquiry. Why isn't he crystal clear about his note? Didn't you type them? I don't know. It was really odd. It felt very unprepared today. Then Kim said that there was never an assault on a bylaw officer. There was only a couple of instances when they were swarmed, but that doesn't mean any kind of injury or anything. They said that there were 3,000 tickets issued and not a single assault. So that's very important because it talks about the nonviolent movement that was present in the city from the perspective of aggression and assaults. The leader of the convoy was always connected to make sure that there were emergency lanes open. And he ratified, I'm talking about Kim, he ratified that the truckers or the people who were communicating from the truckers' side, they were always cooperating to keep the emergency lanes open. Now, they were talking in the end about the moment when the infamous 400 big trucks were moving, because originally they were supposed to be moving to Wellington. But then there was another part of the conversation on which they were saying they needed to move not only 400 to Wellington because there's not enough space, but outside of the city. And then after there was agreement, they started to move. And then the police blocked the move out of Wellington. So the way I heard it, and again, it's just me trying to understand this mess. In other words, it was a setup to the truckers. And I think that that was something that was quite important for us to know. There was some images, of course, of the infamous crane that was in front of Parliament Hill and all the crowds and all the trucks. And then they were trying to link, believe it or not, a threat to the Children's Hospital from February 22nd to the convoy. So obviously, first of all, it's out of scope. The timeline doesn't make any sense. And second, I don't even understand why they're bringing that to this inquiry. It is unrelated. So you can see how the government of Canada is trying to bring more items against the truckers, which is absolutely incredible. This lady, we're just talking about tickets. This lady from the city of Ottawa ratified the fact that there were only 4 trucks that were responding and 1 truck didn't arrive. But then again, according to Kim, there was not a real issue because 3 trucks, when the 1 truck did not arrive because it was blocked, these 3 others were already inside of the hotel, and they had already established that it was just a sprinkler that was broken. So there was not a real need to send more fire trucks. Apparently, when there is a fire, in that kind of context, he would have sent at least 8 trucks. So that 3 arrived for a sprinkler is not something bad, is considered low risk. He also talked about the removal of the truck from the Rideau Center parking lot, that everybody has made a big mess, that they didn't remove it. And he was just de-escalating, saying, no, it was low risk. There's no need for us to go and pick up a truck when there is no clear problem. So we didn't do it right away because there were more pressing matters. And one part that I didn't like was the lead commissioner actually was pressing the matter after the city of Ottawa finished the inquiry, because Kim was saying there was not an issue. First of all, you had 3 trucks, there was only a sprinkler, there's not an issue. And then the lead commissioner was started to press, trying to get him to say that if it would have been a fire, it would have been an issue, which is just an imaginary scenario, which really doesn't make any sense. So I didn't appreciate that from the lead commissioner. So my point of view, Jim Watson, I'm not going to even give him a score because I find him absolutely unprofessional. The type of language he used, the contempt that he showed to the counselor, in particular to the convoy one, the type of language that he uses. And when the entire world is sharing that COVID is a lie, he brought it up. So there's nothing for him to be using that either in the context of the inquiry, and most importantly, in this moment in time when the European Union is running an inquiry and is clearly declaring that there was not anything else but lies about this infamous pandemic. Kim, obviously, I give him a 10 over 10. He was very credible. He was very forward. He was very positive. He was very open. He clarified the Chateau Laurier fire situation, and he also clarified that on the 15th, there weren't any trucks visible. So in my eyes, he's clarifying that there was a little bit of a setup for the truckers. I give the lead commissioner 1 over 10. He sustains the COVID theatrics. Every morning he comes with the mask and he removes it after. Like, there's no need for this situation anymore, except if you're really, really still living under a rock and you haven't heard that COVID is alive. And then he pressed Kim to confirm the Chateau Laurier was a fire hazard when in reality there was not an issue. It was a sprinkler that broke, and obviously there was 3 trucks that could have helped in that situation. Thank you very much for listening.